Құрметті конференция қонақтар, спикерлер мен
Distinguished participants of the forum, and on your page there is a QR code of our Telegram channel. You could scan the QR code and subscribe to our Telegram channel and get all the updates about our forum. In case of emergency, we have emergency exits between the blocks 3.3 and 3.4. Please pay attention. And I'd like to give the floor to the senior specialist Syed Faik Najib to moderate this session today.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on behalf of the Astana International Financial Center, AIFC, and the Islamic Development Bank Institute, ISDBI. We are very pleased to host this session on Islamic banking as part of the Astana Finance Days. Islamic finance, as some of you may know, is already well over USD $3 trillion in assets. And specifically, Islamic banking from this portion comprises 70% of Islamic finance assets, which is about USD 2.2 trillion. But a point to note is that these are the statistics from the commercial sector. We haven't included the Islamic social finance sector, which is like awqaf, sadaqah, you know, and furthermore, we also have not included some of the non-banks and cooperatives. So if we actually aggregate all these type of asset classes, the sector is much, much bigger, perhaps well over USD $4 trillion. But one thing we note is that the Central Asian region still has some catching up to do. Despite numbers of years of progress, the Islamic finance industry continues to be concentrated in generally the Middle East and Southeast Asia, but actively in the Islamic Development Bank, at the Islamic Development Bank Institute, we are receiving a lot of requests from the Central Asian region for support in Islamic banking and Islamic finance, which includes Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and so on. But we are very pleased to have a very diverse set of panelists here today to share some insights with us on their experiences on developing and expanding Islamic banking, and also, importantly, what are the challenges being faced. So I plan to introduce each panelist and give them some time to give some of their perspectives. And towards the end of the session, time permitting, we will also allow some questions from the audience as well. So I will start with my friend Mr. Muhammad Prasad Hanif, who is the Secretary General of the Association of Development Finance Institutions Malaysia. So he is a versatile professional. He's an author, he's a keynote speaker, he's a businessman himself, he owns businesses, he sits in a few board on the board of companies, and he comes from Malaysia, which is often considered as a pioneer in many of the Islamic financial products and services. So Prasad, being a transformation expert, being a professional, a leader, a coach, please share with the audience, how did Malaysia crack the code? How did Islamic finance grow in Malaysia? How did you actually create the demand? Please share with us your experience.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I am humbled to be among very distinguished panelists today. So I would like to thank AIFC for this opportunity for me to sit. And truly, I am not, an expert, but I would like to share a little bit on what I know. Well, when we're talking about creating demand, you might be thinking, I'm going to talk about how we did the marketing, how we did the return on investment and ROE. But I would like to invite you to look at an alternate perspective of how Malaysia was successful, despite the neighboring countries trying to become a hub for Islamic finance as well. Now, we need to step back a little bit to look at the demographic and a little bit of a history of Malaysia before we go deep dive into why Islamic finance was successful in Malaysia. Now, Malaysia achieved its independence in 1957 from the British, and its demography population is essentially 60% Muslims and 30% Chinese of various denominations and 10% Indian and other races. So it's quite a multicultural, how you say, nation. Now, if we go look at the history of this nation, prior to the independence, the Malay Muslims were essentially the majority, and they had clusters of religious schools across the country. Now, after 1957, these religious schools continued, right? And as Malaysia developed 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, there was a lot of graduates from these religious schools. The more successful among them went over to Jordan, to Syria, to Egypt to further their studies. When they came back in the 60s, when they came back in the 70s, they realized that they didn't have any administrative posts, right? Their degrees or from religious scholarships from Egypt, Jordan, Syria was not essentially recognized to be in the public service. So what happened was they returned to their villages or their hometowns, and they started to become imams, clerics, and scholars, right? So they deep dove into religion, and they became influential figures within the society. So therein, you started to see the rise of Muslim clerics. Muslim scholars became a lot more influential during this time. Now, on the other hand as well, after 1957, British, when they left a system of democratic elections, right? It's a monarchy with democratic elections. What happened was two main parties was formed. One was the nationalist secular party, and then the other one was the pan-Malaysian Islamist party. So now you have two parties actually vying for the votes of the Muslims in Malaysia. Now what we have here is essentially competitive politics. Who is more Muslim, right? However, in order for you to show whether who is more Islamic or who is more Muslim, you can't move too far to the right or you can't move too far to the left, because you still have the 40% electorate vote from the non-Muslims. So you have to be somewhere in the middle. Now there's two things that has happened. So one is the rise of the Muslim clerics, the scholars, and number two is the competitive Islamic politics within Malaysia. Now these two are what I would say the critical factors that drove Islamic finance, because when the Muslim clerics were influential, they started talking about riba, they started talking about gharar, they started talking about all the Islamic financial tools that are not available in Malaysia. So the population started to hear about this, right? And they were essentially influenced by this, and they started demanding the politicians for a little bit more accountability. Now this is one. The second is, of course, between the secular nationalist party and the Islamist party. Islamist party was the opposition, so they were essentially pushing the secular nationalist party to be a little bit more Islamic. So in order for the governance at that time, the government at that time, which was the secular nationalist party, to kind of win the votes as well as kind of move the country to that area, they started implementing policies. And then you had the first financial institution, Islamic financial institution in Malaysia in 1963, where they formed Tabung Haji. Now Tabung Haji is essentially it's essentially a deposit-taking financial institution for the Muslims to save money for them to go to Hajj. So this is a very critical institution, because later on in 1980s, they became the National Steering Committee to form the Islamic Bank, the first Islamic bank in Malaysia in 1983, Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad. Now, as you can see, it's essentially these moves, these two key criteria, is the ones that essentially pushed the formation of the first financial institutions and then the first Islamic bank. Now, what is the strategy that follows after that? Now, this is key as well, because up till 1983, you had one Islamic bank. Now, one strategy that Malaysia employed was they protected the Islamic bank. Right? So from 1983, there was no other Islamic financial institution allowed to operate other than the Islamic bank. right? So Bank Islam was allowed to operate for about 10 years, 1983 to 1993. But the protection stopped after 1993 when the central bank allowed the non-conventional banks to operate under windows of Islamic windows, meaning that within their set of products, they can actually, how you say, provide products of, how you say, interest-free products, Islamic products as well. So in 1993, that happened, right, which furthermore solidified, they started doing their marketing, they started doing their promotions and whatnot. It gained a lot more traction. And then in 2000, in 1999, the second Islamic Bank was formed, and then in 2002, the central bank requested all the banks that had Islamic windows to become full subsidiaries or full Islamic banks, right? So they required that. So then you had a plethora of Islamic banks, HSBC, Amana, the Public Bank Islamic, and then CIMB Islamic, and so on. Now, this is also critical because it also fostered an environment of competition among the Islamic financial institutions as well. Now, based on this, today in Malaysia, we have Islamic finance market share is about 44.5%, which is almost half, which is good, and to a valuation of about 974 billion ringgit. Islamic deposits and investment accounts is about 41.6%, 926 billion ringgit valuation. And we are still progressing in terms of takaful fund assets. We're only about 13%, right? Now, this is in terms of the financial institutions overall. However, we also have to take into account the development financial institutions as well, right? Because the DFIs play a very critical role. The development financial institutions in Malaysia that come under the purview of the central bank, there's about 6 of them, right? Out of the 6, only 2 are fully Islamic. The other 4 are not. However, all of them, the ones that are not fully Islamic, they have this one principle where we call Islamic finance first, right? So the reason why they do that is because there's always businesses that cannot be financed by Islamic financing, right? So in Malaysia, you have pig farming, you also have tobacco, and you have a lot of other things that cannot be financed by fully Sharia compliant financial institutions. So what they do is that these development financial institutions are still operating within how you say the Islamic window scheme, and they're able to provide financing for non-Sharia compliant businesses as well. So this is how you kind of balance development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prasad, for the very comprehensive insights from a political perspective as well, and also from using a champion bank, Bank Islam Malaysia in 1983, to move things forward. So now let's go towards from a business perspective, because we have our sister here, Gulanor Atobek, who is the CEO of Alif Bank in Tajikistan, and she has also more than 18 years of experience working in different sectors across the region, including in Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. So tell us about your journey. We understand that Alif Bank is trying to offer Islamic banking products, and then being in the region, what has been your experience so far? Tell us about your challenges, the positives. Please share with us the business perspective.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that my previous experience is in auditing, not Islamic banking. Just for everyone to understand. At the moment, Alif Bank is not an Islamic bank. So we have applied for the Islamic banking license to the National Bank of Tajikistan. And at the moment, we are going through changes in the documents and processes to get ready for the transformation. But it should be noted that from the day one we started operating, we aimed to work as close to the principles of Islamic banking as we could, taking into account that we were a traditional bank, of course, taking into account the regulation on traditional banks. But our products were different, of course, because we aimed to work as close with the Islamic banking principles as it was possible, and they were different, and from the beginning it was very hard to explain to people why our products are different. They didn't believe in this product, so to say, and it took us some time to convince them. For example, our term deposits from the day one were based on the profit sharing principle. Time passed, and currently we can say that our deposit portfolio is growing. We have the highest growth rate in deposit portfolio in the country. And in the top of mind surveys, we are like top 3 bank. And we are proud of it, of course. And from the other hand, the fact that we had different, our products were different from those proposed on the market helped us a lot. Because when we were searching for a core banking system solution for our products, it was very hard to find a banking solution which could fit our products. Because, of course, today there are a lot of such solutions for Islamic banking products, but we opened 9 years ago. We were trying to buy a core banking solution and failed twice. So then we understood that the time passed and we lost some time, and we decided to develop it internally. And this was one of the best decisions that Alif has made, because of course it took us time to develop it, to launch it, to use it. But at the end, eventually the product that was developed, it was fitting our products better than the other solutions that were available on the market. At the same time, we have learned how to develop products, and at the moment we have more than 200 IT staff, and we can say that all the main banking products, solutions that we use are developed internally by our staff. So we have our own core banking system, CRM, payments solutions, the application that we use. All this is developed by our staff internally. And we are proud that nowadays, we have grown and we are leaders in areas like outbound remittances payments, in the digital payments, in the visa, and etc. and etc. So this is, our path.
Thank you very much. This is actually a very unique experience where a bank is offering products close to the Sharia principles without actually having the license. But then even the struggles, you had to build your own software CRM system. So I'm sure the audience will have a lot of questions, later in due course.
And that allowed us to become a digital bank, not, just a simple traditional bank.
So that differentiation actually helped you. Now you're the
Yes.
top 3 bank in Tajikistan. So congratulations on that. Now let me move to the local hero of Kazakhstan, Sister Madina, who is the head of Islamic finance at the AIFC authority. And she has been working on supporting Islamic finance development for more than 10 years. In fact, she has been involved in policies, acts, laws at the IFC, championing Islamic finance throughout her career, in fact, solidly supporting the development of Islamic finance. So now, Sister Medina, with all your experience over here, tell us, how ready is AIFC for championing Islamic finance, Islamic banking in Kazakhstan?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Saik. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Thank you for coming and for joining us. I'm happy to see all of you, and I can say that we have increasing interest in Islamic finance, and we can say that we have a lot of participants here today. So as AIFC, we are ready. So we had the Islamic finance legislation developed by the different development institutions, including Islamic Development Bank and Asian Development Bank. We are members of international Islamic standard-setting organizations such as IOFI, IFSB, and CIBAFI. And we have our rules and Islamic finance rules. We have Islamic banking rules, Takaful rules. So we are happy to see Islamic financial institutions as our participants. So we also, I would like to note that we have tax incentives for our participants. So Islamic banking and providing Islamic finance services, they are exempt from the VAT tax and corporate income tax. Also, we kind of blessed because AIFC signed a Currency Regulation Act with the National Bank of Kazakhstan, which includes a list of the financial services that can be provided to the residents of Kazakhstan. And AIFC Islamic banks, they can provide the activities to the residents of Kazakhstan, corporates and individuals in any currency, including local. So, so many we have to do, of course, in order to develop our legislation, maybe some guidelines and credentials. But overall, I can say that our legislation is developed and adopted. Also, what we are trying to do, we are trying to work to increase awareness on Islamic finance. So that's why we organize different events with our partners, with again with the Islamic Development Bank, other development institutions, and also different educational and consulting companies here in Kazakhstan. For example, last year we organized a big event together with the Asian Development Bank and their consultants in order to increase awareness in Islamic finance. So right now in AIFC we have registered and licensed 2 Islamic banks, and they are not active yet. They are testing their operations, and I hope till the end of this year or next year, I hope this year, inshallah, they will start their operations. Because I understand that the market is asking, I mean, retail and people, SMEs, all of them, they are asking for the active Islamic financial institutions here in Kazakhstan. Of course, in Kazakhstan, we have, if we're talking about Kazakhstan overall, we have 2 Islamic banks and we have 2 active Islamic leasing companies. But I hope we need more to cover all the markets. So this is about Islamic finance in AIFC, and we are ready to support the development of Islamic finance. We are ready to work with each financial institution which are ready to develop Islamic finance and develop Islamic finance together with AIFC, and the next session will be about Islamic capital market. But I want to say that we are ready to welcome and invite potential sukuk issuance also here at the AIFC.
Thank you very much, Sister Medina, and that is indeed a unique advantage because AIFC has this currency management where you can offer the retail clients in Kazakhstan the option of the local currency as well. But I'm glad you touched upon the sukuk topic as well, because my next panelist speaker is again my dear brother Tariq Malaika, who is from the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, which is an ISDB group entity. And of course, Brother Tariq, he has more than 16 years of experience in structuring deals both in the equity markets and debt markets, and he has worked across different banks as well, such as HSBC in Saudi Arabia and Samba Capital. So Brother Tariq, based on your experience in structuring so many deals as well as your role in the ICD, what type of support does ICD provide to the member countries for Islamic finance development, and do you have any experiences in the region which you can share with us in the audience?
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. As mentioned earlier, the Islamic finance industry is really a growing industry worldwide, and specifically in the region. Just to give you an example, a couple of years ago, Tajikistan was one of the fastest growing in terms of Islamic assets in the world. And Kazakhstan has been really a pioneer since 2009 when it comes to implementing Islamic law, banking law, and so on and so forth. And of course, as Sister Medina mentioned, the AIFC have been really promoting Islamic finance and have been trying to work closely with the ICD in terms of sukuk issuances and advising on sukuk issuances. As our brother mentioned, ICD is the private sector arm of the ISDB group. So you could think of us like IFC to the World Bank. So when ICD first started its operations, it started, financing companies directly. And because, Islamic finance is in our DNA, basically all our products are Sharia compliant. That's how kind of we thought we were impacting the Islamic finance industry in our member countries. But we did realize that that was a kind of a limiting reach. Our mission is to promote Islamic finance in our member countries. So we thought of what is a better way of doing it, or a further reach that we can do. So what we decided to do is, in order to reach the SMEs, we started providing lines of finance to financial institutions, and they on-lend those proceeds in a Sharia compliant method to the SMEs. So that's one way of kind of really getting Islamic finance and the Islamic contracts, down to the SMEs even. Another way that we do also kind of promote Islamic finance, we created an advisory services unit which advises conventional banks on opening Islamic windows or converting to fully fledged Islamic banks. We've been pretty successful on that aspect. We've done one conversion here in Kazakhstan. In the region, we have another 8 projects that are ongoing. So we look to increase that. And also part of the advisory services, we also advise on sukuk issuances. So that's not only advising sovereigns on issuing sukuk, but that's advising entities within our member countries on issuing sukuk. So this kind of promotes the debt capital markets, or Islamic debt capital markets in the country. It's important to note that ICD itself is looking at issuing a local currency tenge sukuk here, and this would be really a landmark transaction if we do it. It would be the first sukuk in the region, local currency sukuk in the region, and we will use those proceeds to help our line of finance business on lending to other financial institutions. Since inception, ICD has approved around 250 million USD of projects. We've dispersed around 34 million. And for this year, there's around 30 million USD in the pipeline. That's a mixture between PPP type of projects and also lines of finance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Tariq, and that is indeed very innovative. Once you do issue the local currency sukuk, please do invite us to the launch party, all right? Don't forget us. So let me also go through another round of questions with our panelists before we open the floor to the audience. So Prasad, let me come back to you. You shared with us a very good historical perspective of how Islamic finance came into being in Malaysia. Now tell us a bit about the future. Where do you see the strategic developments taking place in Malaysia, and what type of cross-border business opportunities are available? So for instance, Kazakhstan, the Development Bank of Kazakhstan did issue a sukuk in Malaysia 10 years or maybe 12 years ago. How about now, like you are a business owner, will you list your business in the AIX? Please tell us about the cross-border opportunities.
Thank you for the question. Well, this year alone, I think there's a lot of analysts have actually mentioned that there's going to be a lot of cross-border opportunities in Malaysia across essentially focusing on Southeast Asia for now, I suppose, right? But Malaysia has always been a proponent of cross-border investments, and the first foreign Islamic bank was opened in 2005, which is the Kuwait Finance House. And since then, Malaysia has been aggressively pursuing cross-border issuances of sukuk. Essentially, what they did was what we did was essentially attracting foreign entities to issue sukuk in the ringgit, as well as encouraging local entities to include non-ringgit sukuk to raise funds as well. Now, there's a few strategies that they employed since 2005, if I can summarize. Among them is acceptance of ratings for multi-currency sukuk by international credit rating agencies, recognition of documents governed by UK and US laws as well. That's one of the things that we put in place. And allowing, this is one thing that we did quite aggressively in the last few years, was allowing non-resident multinational companies and multilateral agencies to issue ringgit and non-ringgit securities. Of course, we also have facilitation of cross-border sukuk issuance through ASEAN funds passportability and Malaysia Islamic funds in Hong Kong. But though it is still regional, right, we hope to expand further as well. Now, in terms of cross-border corporate sukuk, this year alone, we have essentially issued more than double what we issued last year in the same period, right? So you can see that there's a lot of opportunities here, and we're growing quite fast as well. Now, Malaysia has a deep sukuk market. We have about 41.6% of the global outstanding sukuk. Now, before I end, I would like to just take this opportunity to talk about the importance of sukuk in terms of development as well. Our development financial institutions essentially were mandated to raise their own funds, right, to develop the countries, right? So we have SME Bank raising their sukuk wakalah program, and they initially targeted 500 million ringgit, right? And within less than a year, they essentially broke the bank, I suppose, right? They managed to raise funds up till 1 billion ringgit, right? At the same time, also we have BSN establishing its sukuk wakalah program of 3.5 billion ringgit, which they successfully raised as well. Now, BSN, Bank Simpanan Nasional, is essentially focused on providing microfinancing as well as very micro enterprise financing as well. SME Bank is essentially focusing on SME development. On the other hand, another development financial institutions, which is the Malaysian Development Bank, Bank Pembangunan Malaysia Berhad, issued its green sukuk for ESG, and Alhamdulillah, it also raised. They were also able to raise funds to fund the ESG infrastructure programs within Malaysia as well. So there's a lot of opportunities for development financial institutions within your country to look into raising sukuk and to spur their growth and the national development. And this in this economy of volatility and whatnot, development financial institutions play a very critical role as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prasad. You know, even with the Malaysian experience regionally in the ASEAN is something which can be replicated in Central Asia, because I mentioned there are many countries in the region which are asking us for assistance. And I think one more key takeaway which I took from your answer was that it's not only banking, but also development finance, SME fund, microfinance fund. There's a whole spectrum of products and services which Islamic finance can offer, and it's actually taking place on a cross-border level between countries as well. It's not just within the domestic context. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much for that. So Sister Golenor, I'm going to come back to you. Actually, you've already hinted some of the answers in your first response, but if you have any advice, you know, for the people in Kazakhstan, for the market players in Kazakhstan, what type of differentiation or what type of strategy or what lessons learned or what advice would you give them if they want to replicate Al Alif Bank's success and become the top 3 bank in the country?
Yeah. Top 3 in terms of the top of mind surveys performed in our country, not by size. Just as an auditor, I mean, as I have a background of auditor, I have to clarify some statements. Yes, in fact, what is essential probably for an Islamic bank is a good Sharia board, with people, includes people with different background, which can just accompany each other, which we are lucky to have. The second thing to mention is, of course, there are a lot of trainings that we do for the top management, middle management, for the staff, to make sure that they properly understand the requirements of Islamic banking. And number three is generally the financial knowledge of the people is not on the level which we would expect to have. But taking into account that Islamic banking is something new and something we have not learned from our childhood, in terms of Islamic banking, it's even more worse. So the understanding that, taking into account that the majority of population of Tajikistan is Muslims, still their understanding of Islamic banking principles are, I would say, completely different from what it is in fact. And we do different videos, messages and other stuff just to share at least some understanding of the Islamic banking, just to close the gap, because they can get dissatisfied not because of our services but because of their understanding how those services should be. So these are the 3 points I can mention, but I also need to mention that from our experience, people are selecting Alif. They are with us not because of the Islamic, because we don't use in marketing. We are not an Islamic bank. In fact, I mean, we don't have the license and we cannot use it, but we don't want to use it either, because these are the requirements that we want to follow. These are the requirements that we feel are important for us, for our staff. And it's not just something that we want to use in marketing. So we follow those rules for ourselves because we believe in them. These are important for us, for the founders, for the people. Why people choose us? I personally believe that 90% of our clients are with us because of the services that we provide, the great products that we have, our openness, our, how we treat them. And this is the main message, I would say from our experience, that banks should concentrate on that more than just saying we are Islamic. And just wanted to add, if you would allow, my colleagues were talking about sukuk. Following those principles, in fact, means for us that we just, we have an opportunities, but we do not use them. We have to limit ourselves because of the rules. And one of the examples can be that we have a high liquidity, which a traditional bank could use, to earn additional profit, but we cannot use, because there are no easy Sharia-compliant liquidity solutions which we can use, to appropriately invest. So probably that is an area that we need to think of, maybe some regional Sharia-compliant liquidity solutions that could be developed, and banks could use those. That's all. Thank you.
No, I think that's very important, because one of the key misconceptions is that Islamic finance is a religious product, it's for Muslims, but in fact it's a principles-based product which is applicable for all. And I'm glad you ended on that note of requiring a regional Sharia-compliant, liquidity management solution platform, because actually I want to skip Sister Madina for now and go to Brother Tariq. So Brother Tariq, you are an expert in the areas of sukuk, and the banks need some solutions, some liquidity management solutions. So tell us, is it now easy to issue sukuk? Because if you joined the Islamic finance industry like me 13 years ago, it was considered an alien structure, very inefficient. Now if the Kazakh banks or even Alif Bank in future, inshallah, want to issue sukuk, is it easy? Tell us about this.
Well, easy is relative, right? Okay, so I think there's more than one or two ways of looking at this, right? One is issuing sukuk in the international debt capital markets, right? And the other is issuing local currency sukuk. Both have their challenges and complexities. So when we're looking at our member countries of ICD, you don't have many good quality credits. So that has always been a challenge for us, right? And then getting rated and issuing for such countries has been challenging. On the local currency sukuk, I think it all depends on the regulations that are there in the country. So if there's no sukuk law per se, it creates a sort of a challenge to issue. As you might know, usually the documentation is governed under English law. So the implementation of English law within the member country can be also very challenging. So I'll give you an example. ICD in 2016 advised the Central Bank of Jordan on issuing a short-term sukuk for liquidity management purposes. And JICA were involved. They provided technical assistance, and we helped them with their first issuance. But since then, they haven't issued another sukuk because of the complexity behind it locally, right? So I think, as I mentioned, it depends on the regulations being there. I think that the government needs to really take a leading role in developing, I think, debt capital markets in general, not only Islamic debt capital markets, but debt capital markets in general. So there is some sort of a benchmark for others to issue. We've had a lot of corporates within the region come to us and say, okay, advise us on issuing sukuk. But it's challenging because you have to work around the current laws, right? And if it's not a government-related entity and there are some taxation implications, how do you work around that, or how do you get them exempt from taxes? And usually if there is no link to the government, you can't. But in general, worldwide, yes, it's easier to issue sukuk because sukuk has become a debt capital market instrument that is known to investors. And you have both the supply, well, actually, the demand outweighs the supply. So there's a big gap there. So there is potential. If, the region starts to look at it in a global sense and want to tap the capital markets, this is the time to do it, right? And play that leading role. And then the corporates will follow, I think.
No, thank you very much, Brother Tariq. And I couldn't agree more. And picking up on that, the idea of championing. So I already said, Sister Medina, you're the champion of Islamic finance in Kazakhstan. What further support do you think AIFC needs from its international developer partners? And more importantly, you mentioned that there are some market players who have registered themselves in AIFC. What suggestions or what do you think is needed for these market players to realize the full potential of Islamic finance?
First of all, of course, we thank to the Islamic Development Bank and other development institutions that help AIFC in Kazakhstan to develop Islamic finance. And for example, right now, together with ISDB, we are planning to develop kind of country report, Islamic finance country report that will include the marketing research. We would like to understand the demand on Islamic finance products here in Kazakhstan and understand, the numbers. Yes, we understand that we have demand, but we don't have the numbers. So that's why we would like to arrange this kind of report. And I hope that all market players and potential customers, they will be active, because sometimes we don't want to open the link. We don't want to push some questionnaires, but I would like to ask all the people to be more active. If we want to develop Islamic finance market, we have to do it together, not only AIFC or government, not only the market players, but just all together, including the customers. And this is why I understand that sometimes we are waiting for the perfect times. I mean, we're waiting for perfect conditions, perfect rates, maybe perfect legislation, but it's sometimes it's impossible. So that's why we have to start right now. We already we are developing Islamic finance for more than 10 years. And I see that, like, the perfect time, maybe it will be like, who knows, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 2 years, who knows. But only we who can start and who can do the Islamic finance. That's why the potential Islamic financial institutions, they have to be active and they have to start their activities and they have to start to provide their services to the market. And also customers, they also have to be active. They have to ask government, AIFC, for the new Islamic financial instruments. So this is that from my side, because I know we have like 2.5 minutes, and maybe we have questions from our participants.
If I can just build on what Medina said, I know we don't have much time, but on the demand side, as I mentioned before, ICD is looking to issue local currency sukuk tenge, right? So where's the challenge for us as ICD? Is okay, there is local currency demand for on-lending, right? From ICD side, we have clients that are looking for local currency. Now that we want to issue a local currency, who's going to buy those sukuk, right? There are only 2 institutions, Islamic financial institutions. Will conventional banks buy? Are you going to go through that learning curve of what's a sukuk and trying to convince them to buy the sukuk? So this is, I think, for us, the main challenge. We want to play that catalyst role in issuing a local currency sukuk. And, we need that support also, I think.
Nothing. Thank you very much, Brother Tariq. And maybe, because we are both from the Islamic Development Bank Group, we'll collaborate with you when we're doing the country report where the numbers are coming in to also help you further go ahead with the issuance to be convinced. Now, I know the screen is warning us that there is only 1.5 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience? We apologize. This topic is so interesting. That's why we were all sharing with the panelists. We have only time for like 1 question. So, okay, if there is a microphone available, there is a question here.
Make it a good one.
Yeah, make it a good one. We are really sorry, we've only 1 minute. Yeah.
Take your role, Brother Faiq, to ask Brother Hanif to talk more about how Malaysia have lots of institution and human capital building for Islamic finance, starting from NCF, IUM, ASAS, and all other institutions. I think this is also played into important role and infrastructure to see Malaysia at this stage.
I'll try to make this within 30 seconds, right? So it's already, the countdown is there. It's making me nervous. So, I mentioned earlier about the competitive politics as well as the role of Muslim scholars. That was actually one of the key drivers, essentially. Essentially making the country not too much to the far, not too much to the left, but pushing the Islamic agenda towards each aspect of life. So there was a issue about Islamic education specifically, and when the government decided to make University Malaya, right, a fully university teaching the secular subjects, right? So there was no Islamic university. So what happened was the government pushed and the opposition as well pushed to have an Islamic university there as well. So there was push over there. And then INSIF was an idea from the central bank to collaborate with industry practitioners as well. There was essentially a concerted movement between the industry, the central bank, the government, as well as the Muslim clerics in Malaysia towards the human capital development to enable Islamic finance in Malaysia. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but 30 seconds, that's all I can give. Thank you.
Unfortunately, the time is up, but I'm sure you have questions. You are welcome to interact with us once the session is over. But at the moment, please join me in thanking our respected panelists for the wonderful session. Yes. Yeah. We really appreciate the insights, and we hope to see Kazakhstan prosperous overall and in Islamic finance.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much.
You.
You've been a lovely
We
audience.
have another Islamic finance session in 10 minutes, Islamic capital market.